Uh, Hey guys, how's it going? So, here we have the process of how to create your exploded diagram. Okay, so on your screen you should see there what for the most part is the objective, right, for this exploded diagram, right? So we have it right here with the objective will be now. If we take a look at what we have done so far, right, which is the what drawing was it? Well, this was the street elevation, and the street elevation right here. So again, the idea is that we start understanding, and we start learning that projects require different types of drawings, right? And within a project you're going to have multiple types of drawings, right? So we're creating a number of drawings for our project. Again, we're taking a close look into our case study, right? The one that I'm scrolling through right now. Again, we're very familiar with it, right? The Liverpool Insurgentes department store, Roshkin Arquitectos, right, in Mexico City. So using this as a precedent and as a study, we see the the use of their drawings, right? And we see the exploded diagram right there, and we also see, right, a section drawing, right, later on. Most likely not for this project, right, but through your career, through your school, you're gonna do section drawings, which are pretty fascinating drawing around their own. And we have drawings that we did generated, right, for our project, which was the facade. Okay, so I'm gonna break this lecture down into a number of videos, right, just so that it doesn't get too dense, right? So let's actually start off by taking a closer look into what these drawings are. And by these drawings, I'm talking about the exploded diagram, right? So let's maybe start off by a quick inventory of, again, what is it that we see on the drawing, right? So if you take a look at the drawing on your screen, what are the different components that you see there? What are the different parts and how are the graphics communicating the viewer the different qualities of this project, right? So we can, maybe some of the first things that pop out are the layers, right? And again, we see them in a different way, right? I mean, we're somewhat familiar with this project already, so you can see that these are all different layers which make part of the facade, right? This is right here. So we have the layers, right? And not only on one face, right? I mean, this project has 3 faces, right? 1, 2, 3. So it has the system, right? I mean, operates in the 3 different faces from what right now is showing as a cube, right, as a box. So we see that, right? What else do we see? Well, we see, talking about the layers, we see their labels, right? So they're annotated with, right, these lines right here that point to the object, right? Now, in order for these lines, to not maybe, stand out too much, the designers right here have graphically dashed the lines, which it's personal preference. It's a purpose behind the drawing itself. It's not always done right, but here we have it. Now we also see that we're using right this little dot right there versus the arrow. That's also graphical preference. You know, you can use the arrow as well, except that sometimes the arrows point to very specific locations or areas or even items and components within a drawing. The dot most often, right, is used to represent something that it's a bigger area, right? So it kind of like says, hey, kind of like everything that belongs to where this dot is touching or, you know, graphically presented on. So the arrows sometimes are for more specific highlights and, you know, pointing to specific content, rather than the dot, you know, it's more generalized area or components, right? So we have that. So again, the dashed. Now notice that within this dashed lines as well, right? This you know, this lines that point out to the different components right here. Notice that they're parallel to each other, right? Meaning that they're just vertical, right? So we, again, you know, my vertical lines are not as vertical, but you see that there's some sort of a controlled method to this, right? I mean, versus whether they're vertical, whether they're horizontal, or whether they are on this sort of 90-degree turn, like we have them over here, right? Part of a well-crafted graphical presentation has to do with that as well. It's very typical, and I made a lot of these comments in your guys' midterm presentations, right? That it's very common, right? I mean, to just kind of start pointing and using arrows all over the place, and, you know, start doing kind of like that, and, you know, maybe start even doing that. Again, part of this graphical development and craft, this part, it's a big part, is to actually keep your arrows parallel and clean, right? And I'll point that out right now that we dive into the actual exercise. But you want to keep these lines as much as possible parallel to each other, right? Again, whether they're horizontal or vertical, right? Meaning that they're parallel to each other, and even you want to keep the angle, right? This angle right here, you want to keep it relatively similar. Now, it doesn't always work that way, right? It doesn't always work that easily. So that's also that's where kind of like that creativity kind of gets to get in there, you know, it's not always possible, but if possible, you know, we want to keep on clean, whether versus this kind of like, you know, kind of like lines and arrows pointing all over the place, right? This angle is different than this angle, than this angle, than this one. So again, you know, you'll see that not everyone follows these guidelines, but, you know, a clean drawing, you see clean drawings, you'll see that, you know, they make that effort, right, to follow that in, you know. Again, we're just trying to keep things clean, right? So we have labels, we have our pointers right there. What else do we have? Well, we have the you see right here in the background, right? You have the building. Right? We have the where everything comes into place, right? Where everything you know, comes together, right? So again, you're taking different components that are not necessarily overlap, but they're within the same relatively area, and you start kind of like boom, 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 extruding them, right? Exploding them. But we see the origin, right? We see the origin right here, you know, which would be the building itself, right? So we see a little bit of you know, of that. Now, what I'm highlighting right here, we'll also see that there's a thicker line that actually outlines the building itself, right? That is also graphically helps, you know, kind of like, you know, in terms of attention for the building, right? So we have that right there. What else do we have? We have a drawing title, right? Very important. right here, facade exploded diagram. We have title. And well, just in general, I think these are the different components that we have, right? I mean, the labels, the arrows and pointers, the different layers themselves, right? Now, notice that there's also within the different graphics in here, there's dashed lines, but there's also different weights of lines, right? This is in dash styles, right? This is a longer dash. This is a shorter dash, right? Almost like dots. And this one's thinner, right? This one that I'm highlighting right now is a little bit, the weight, it's not as thick than this one's, for example, right? Now, additionally, I think there will be another layer, another lines that would help, I think, and again, we're just using this as a reference. We're basing off our drawings, we're starting off our drawings, you know, mimicking what we see right here. But it doesn't mean that we can complement or edit or change or alter or enhance as we see fit. So I think something that, you know, would enhance this drawing, and you'll see it right now as I show you guys some other examples, would be maybe some lines that show how, you know, all of these layers come together and where they actually meet, which is actually the building. And you'll see that usually this is done again through lines, particularly dash lines, right? So you have these dash lines that kind of like project how all the layers come together, right? And where their origin is at, right? So you would have kind of these lines right here. Now again, I mean, drawings is just like anything really, right? I mean, anything that requires a technique, whether that's trimming your beard, brushing your teeth, or even the way that you handwrite. It's all about technique, right? So I mean, we all do things differently, and that could be for legibility, that could be for efficiency, that could be for technique, that could be just a way of standing out, right? So I mean, nothing's really prescribed. There are definitely you know, general ideas and overall ways of doing things, but you'll see that different architects, different designers, different drafters, different parts of the world act and operate differently. Okay. Nonetheless, we have studied and we've seen the different components that make up this reference drawing for us, right, of this exploded facade. And again, I think maybe it's important to point out, right, why this is particularly important, why this drawing is a particularly important drawing for the project, right? Both the case study that we're making right now and also our project. The nature of the project, right, it's layers, right, and it acts on layers. So it's necessary to create a drawing that actually is able to depict the different layers, being able to see them individually, but also understand that they're part of a system, right? So as I scroll through this ones right here, we can start understanding, right? I mean, it's like, okay, so maybe this is one layer right here, maybe this is another layer here, maybe even better, let's do a different color, right? So then maybe this is another layer right here, and then check this out. What do we have back here? Another component right here, right? So there's a lot of things going on that, again, do all of these people right here that are enjoying their drinks and coffees, right? I mean, this guy, and this group of people need to know? Probably not, right? And neither do they care necessarily. You know, I mean, maybe once we start explaining the project to anyone, right? I mean, they can actually like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting, right? But again, it's more design communication, right? And again, for those developing the project, you know, from a construction standpoint, from a design standpoint, or maybe even spatial perspective, right? I mean, how to lay out the space. So that's the introduction of the exploded diagrams. Now, I would like to point out that these types of drawings, right? Actually, maybe I can start over here. A while ago, I ran into this image over here, right, of this piece of art, right? And I didn't really dive much into who it was by the name or anything about it, really. you know, until right now. I just googled the name again, you know, and try to find the artist, you know. This is a work by Mexican artist Damian Ortega, and I think this is a nice way of actually also explaining these exploded diagrams, right? What's fascinating about this piece in particular is that it's not a drawing, it's not a 3D model, but it's an art installation, right? Within a physical space, within an environment. And you know, I haven't really dived much into the logistics of it, of how it was realized. We're here now in the artist homepage, I believe. Nope, I might be wrong. I'm actually in a gallery page site. So this might be the gallery that hosted the exhibition. But we can get a clear picture of that, right? I mean, if you look close enough, right? I mean, you can see all of these strings kind of projecting from this lattice on the ceiling, right? So even the design of the lattice, right? I mean, must be taken into account, right? I mean, all of this kind of structural work, and then from which all of these lines are kind of being projected. And again, what's neat about this is that we see an object that we are most likely familiar with. We see it in a completely different way, right? We see it in a completely different perspective, in the way that we're actually able to see, right? I mean, different literal connections and implied connections, right? What I like about this piece of art is that a vehicle, in essence, is a system, right? I mean, I think we talked about this, right? I mean, you have the engine system, you have the wheel system, the suspension system, electrical system, right? And it all comes together and it all works to make the vehicle function, or generate all the function, produce all the functions that the vehicle do, right? I mean, it's not only about moving us, but it's moving us comfortable. It's about not overheating. It's about actually moving us, but also navigating the terrain, right? I mean, suspension of the car. So I like this. What I like about this piece of work and this kind of drawings and graphic is that, again, it highlights those relationships, right? I mean, that there's pieces that might be hidden and might be not, you know, depicted right away by the eye, but it is shown, right? I mean, so this drawing sort of show the backstory and the background behind the project. So you know, a great example of what these drawings can do, right? Again, this work by Damian Ortega, you know, in this case, right? I mean, this is a beautiful shot right here. Maybe we can see it, right? This one right here, right? I mean, I had not seen this one right here. You know, it's really nice to see, you know, the object in the resting position, its original position, versus its exploded version. That's a really nice highlight right there. And it seems that there's actually a video for this, right? I'm not necessarily going to maybe play it right now. If anything, you know, I mean, I encourage you to take a look at it, right? Well, you know, that's the long address, right? But it's actually, this looks very, very interesting, right? I mean, actually, I think this drawing is kind of showing the nature of it, right? I mean, we can start seeing kind of like pieces kind of exploded, right? Mythic import and cosmological scale. Wow, guys, check this out. That's fascinating. Wow, mind blowing, right? No pun intended. It's blowing, guys. I'm blown away. So there it is, guys, right? So anyway, I'll let you guys maybe watch this on your time, right? But we can see it right here, right? I mean, how they're being suspended, right, by these cables, and it's almost like time just paused, right? I mean, it's just like they're frozen in time. That's amazing. And you can see how, as persons, right, we're so captivated by this, right? Because again, we're used to seeing the objects. We're used at knowing what these objects are and how they operate and what they're used for. We're just not necessarily used at seeing them like this, right? I mean, in the exploded version, right? Just like this drawing was showing right here. That's a great video, guys. I mean, we should definitely take a closer look at this, right? Automóvil desarmado, right? There you go. Ah, man, you guys can see the sketches of it, right? Ah, that's so great. We saw the sketch and then we see the end product, right? That's beautiful. All right, guys. Let's pause this guy right here. And again, just a little bit of a background story on these. These drawings, they're very typical, right? I mean, these exploded diagrams are very typical in architecture. They're used to represent all sorts of different relationships, whether that's piece of equipment and furniture and how that fits within its space, or it can be how a building fits within a site as much as that, right? Or layers within an environmental context. So here we have sort of a diagram for a building, right? But we can start seeing like this one, for example, right? It actually shows a high rise. It has different layers right here for the underground, the ground level, the different layers within the first floors, and then all of the different floors above that, right? So Hudson Yards in New York. Right, so we see all of these different drawings right here, and again, this type of drawings are not only specifically for architecture. You'll see them actually being used in all sorts of design, furniture, product, you name it, right? So anyway, just going through these views right here, some of these exploded diagrams and how they operate, right? And I know we did a similar exercise, like this one for if I'm not mistaken, media class or a graphics class for one of the logos that we were doing there. So that's the introduction, right, for what we are getting ourselves into. Now you'll see that there's different views. This is sort of a perspective view versus an isometric view. That's also something to take into account while we're developing our project, right? I mean, which view are we going to capture? Are we going to capture a perspective view or an isometric view? Because they have different qualities, right? They have different, well, they show the information differently, okay? So that's the objective, right? We have here the, I have started the drawing, right, preparing for the class. I have stored here some of the views for that, right? I mean, I already created an isometric view versus a perspective view right here, and studying different variables to see which one will be more efficient for us. That would be the 3D modeling part, right? Again, how do we get from the model that we should have right now to an exploded version of that on Rhino? How do we then generate lines using the same command that we used for the previous drawing, which was the make 2D command, to generate a flat drawing out of a 3D object, ultimately leading us to its composition and illustration on Adobe Illustrator. Okay, that's where we're going, and ultimately compose our board and even enhance it a little bit more with more information about your guys' particular project and design. Okay, so I think that this is a good place to maybe pause and stop. Just a brief introduction, and the next video we'll get right away into how to generate your graphics. All right, guys.